Hello, Anule. Ready? Good day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and we want to welcome all of you to the third day of the Higher Education Pedagogy Workshop brought to you by the Association of African Universities. And so obviously I welcome you on behalf of the Secretary General, Professor Etienne Hille, and the senior management of the AAU. You will agree with me that it's been quite an interesting and insightful and exciting as well 3-day journey, despite the fact that we had some technical challenges yesterday. We were still able to go through the slides and had very engaging session as well. The top of it all was the debate as to whether we need training in teaching or pedagogy as academics in African universities. So when there were diverse views and very enriching discussion as well. As we all suggested yesterday, we are going to have today's session. Also, it's a pre-recorded. We had to do that today for us to have a very smooth transmission. And so right at the end of it, Prof will be on the platform to answer most of the questions that you'll be having today. So without wasting much time, I would want to welcome everyone and then also start the streaming for us. And at the end of it, if you have any question, if you have any contribution, any comment, you can use the chat board, or you just click on the symbol with the hand raised, and we will enable your microphone for you to have the floor. Thank you so much for joining us. Shortly, I would want to upload a video. Okay, so we are beginning from where we ended yesterday. That was the day 2 session, and Prof has agreed that we'll do the 3rd module tomorrow, and Monday he has given us an extra time for us to complete the 4th module, and that is very great of him. And so instead of ending tomorrow, we'll end Monday with the 4th module as well. So this is the continuation of yesterday's session. Thank you very much, and please have the best of the day. All right, Prof. Thank you very much. I think we can proceed now.
Okay, go ahead. It's going to be a little fast for this section. Okay, as already said, learning is a systematic process, not a one-shot affair. It is triggered off by your encounter with some experience. In other words, things happen to you in this world. You start reasoning differently, behaving differently as a result of a lesson you have learned. One good thing you might say about learning is that it grows. First, it does increase incrementally. That is your experience of today building on your experience of yesterday, and so expanding the scope of your effort, your life, and then reinforcing or sometimes changing completely or even discarding the previous experience. As you learn, you become a different person. And being a different person means doing, seeing, and looking at things from a different perspective. The important thing is that qualitatively, this change in behavior, this change in perception, this change in orientation enriches you. So you are now new. Whatever you do, the experiences becomes more interesting and the applications richer. But everything learning is not learning if it doesn't add value. In other words, if it doesn't make the learner an improved, positively improved person. And we'll see more of this as we proceed to the other slide. Good thing about learning, we said earlier, is not static. It's not I have learned and so I can now stop. It is, I have learned, and learning has equipped me for more learning. So throughout life, we are learning. That is what is known as lifelong learning. That is, as you go through from one stage of living to another, you are learning. You don't stop. It's a continuous process. As we are looking, in other words, continuous, not just continuous accumulation of experience, but continuous improvement on the quality of what you do. In other words, I said in the slide there, the new experience is enriching and in most cases modifying your previous worldview, your previous attitude, your previous value orientation. And sometimes you begin to discard what you used to have. If the previous one was that women are no use, and now from your new exposure, you find that women are as useful as men, means you have discarded your old prejudice for a more acceptable way of looking at things. And as you learn, as I say, you learn, it's like you're learning to improve. So your capacity to learn becomes improved as you do more. As we practice this experience of using ICT, if we stop, we stop learning. But if we continue, we're going to learn more and enrich what you have. We have already learned. And so because it's a continuing effort, it requires that you sustain the effort. And when you sustain, learning becomes your habit, and learning becomes your way of life. And not just a way of life, but the way of life. Wherever you are, your eyes, your senses, your sensibilities are wide open to something novel and how you can integrate this into what you already have so that you build upon them. And when you say lifelong learning, it's just a dimension that as you grow, you are learning. But life-wide in this sense means that as you grow and have new responsibilities, you learn to cope with those responsibilities. If we are to come down to the university level, at 28, 30, you are an assistant lecturer. Your responsibility is to organize tutorials for students, teach 1 or 2 courses. But at another level, at 35, you are now a lecturer, and you are required to do more, including counseling students. So your ability to add a counseling to that is life-wide. In other words, you broaden. And if eventually you become professor and you're head of department, dean of faculty, you find that management principles have to be something else that you have to acquire. So what I'm saying is that you not only progress vertically, you also horizontally. You also vertically, you also progress horizontally. You've all had the expression that somebody has been promoted beyond his level, his capacity. It simply means that when that person was at one level, he or she was performing. Now at another level, he or she is no longer performing. So learning for what that person has not been life-wide. In other words, lifelong continuing experiencing is a good thing, but life-wide, broadening the scope to include the new responsibilities that fall on you as you go through life is also important. That's why people no longer simply say lifelong, but they also say lifelong and life-wide. We'll see more about this. Let's just go on. Now, one important thing about learning is that everyone is different. Even a set of twins, one of them is different from the other. So there are individual differences in learning. And as teachers, we have to take this into consideration. We do not say a group we taught physics last year were this level, and so expect this one to be the same level. We're not saying the person's got an A in the pre-university entrance exam or is expected to. There will be circumstances in their lives that will make them different. The implication for this in teaching is that we do just say, do you understand? And people echo yes. Closer, come from the podium, get people doing something, and follow them through the act of learning by doing. And in the process, see the progress or non-progress that is being made, and try to understand the reason for progress and non-progress, and help the learner to overcome whatever may be the obstacles. And this learning readiness, individual differences in learning, from my own experience, can be seen at 3 levels. Level 1 is learning readiness. If you take a 25-year-old and a 15-year-old, there are different levels of maturation. Somebody who's been through high school successfully, and one who has not been through high school so that successfully, the level of intellectual development, cognitive learning may not be exactly the same. And if somebody has studied at home and another person in an institution, there'll be, if somebody has come from a home where all the facilities are, or a school where all the facilities are, and the one from a home where the facilities are like in the schools where the facilities are not what they should be, the way they are ready to go to the next stage will be different. So it pays to look at the level of learning readiness of each person. We set up entrance examinations for admission to institutions. We're looking at learning readiness. How prepared are they by previous experience to go into the new experience? You even notice that some preschool institutions around your neighborhood, what they do is not really A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3. They are preparing the young ones to function in groups, to express themselves, to control themselves. And it's also possible at the university level, with some close interaction with students, to determine the level of readiness by various groups and treat them perhaps differently. Differently meaning the way you handle them, but the achievement, the goal will still be the same. There is also the dimension of learning willingness. Learning willingness. It's mainly a question of how motivated is the student for this new course. Let's take again ICT. Some people believe because they've had a literary type of pre-university education that never been exposed to ICT, that when you put them there, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be impossible. And then, while another group will say, oh, I've been working on all this, and so I'm glad to continue. So that shows an example of 2 levels of willingness. One is not just ready, but it's also highly motivated. Ready as for what have you learned before, but willing as at your desire, your motivation to continue. So those who say, why am I studying this? What am I going to use it for? They are less willing than those who say, whether I'm going to use this or not, I must go through it. And motivation. And in teaching, there are also ways of motivating the not too motivated. It's a question of giving them a positive response, even when they're not doing well, to say, yes, you're trying, go ahead. Or sometimes by mere talking about what you can gain by learning this thing. And this is related to the third one, learning commitment. We say learning is not an easy task. Those who give up never succeed in learning. But those who have the resilience continue. And as you continue, you learn more. And as we said, the more you learn, the more learning becomes a habit. So learning commitment will be seen as the level of efforts. When students are working in groups and one of them is getting up too often, or one of them is causing trouble among the group, or one of them is closing his or her eyes and his or her ears to what is happening, that person is less committed. And then, of course, everything you're learning goes in phases, perhaps the first phase being less difficult than the second, and so on. So those who are committed will go almost smoothly in from 1 to 2, whereas those who are less committed will tend to give up. And since our interest here is to make sure that our learners do not give up or never give up, there are also techniques for structuring the learning and committing and helping those who need help. And this we'll see more as we proceed. Thank you. So learning itself has several levels. Let's start with level 1 below on the screen. It says adopting. Adopting simply means what you do by memorizing whatever is said to you is gospel truth. That the time you have put what you've adopted into practice, or when you begin to change here and there. In other words, it's no longer 100% of what you heard from your lecturers or what you read from the book, but what you've read, what you've heard, what you've been told, enriched by what you've seen in action. Let me illustrate. You say, in a democracy, there must be a ruling party and an opposition party. As you go through the experience of seeing, feeling how democracy works, you probably notice that it's not a question of just the political parties, that there is something called freedom of association, freedom of speech, that where you may have those parties, but where they do not, where they do not, what do you call it, where they do not exist, you find that even the political parties could not function, but democracy is about how the people are organized and how they adapt to their situations. So the person who has merely adopted is just learning at the surface level. The one who is adapting, that is modifying as a result of what that person has experienced, is really learning in the better sense of the word, because he's enriched what the original ideas. But what we might call the highest desirable point is innovating. In other words, you are told this is the way it's done. You get to a situation, you learn, you adapt what you've been told to what is there. Then at a stage you say, how do I make things to work better? So you sort of take your knowledge together of the subject, of the society, of the environment around you, and you bring in something novel. I will throw this open to you as questions. As university people, what level should you aim at? Is it merely adoption, or is it adaptation, or adapting, or is it innovating? While you are thinking of the answer, I will tell you this. The world today requires innovation. And so in our teaching, we must bring out the innovation potentials in the learner. And one thing that you can say how, in most cases, how well has he learned? We set examinations. Ladies and gentlemen, examinations are not bad if they examine something. Certificates are not bad if they certify something. But the world of work today is looking for people who have successfully learned in a different sense, or if you like, in an expanded sense. And this expanded sense, from my work and experience, has 3 dimensions. One we mentioned in other sense, yesterday, cognitive learning. If you like, your brain. What can your brain do? You notice you can do analytical, logical, critical reasoning, thinking and reasoning, which is expected both anywhere you go, as you mingle with people, as you work, either you work for people or you work for yourself. Communicative competence, meaning both writing, speaking, even your body language. You can be with others. You'll be a good listener in the first place, good observer. You are not hasty in reacting. And when you react, you are contributing to a dialogue. You are not dictating anything. You are contributing to a dialogue. So you are acceptable in society. And number 3, there is broad general knowledge. We did say yesterday, or 2 days before, that the world now doesn't have narrow specialization. What this means for us as teachers, for the curriculum level too, we must avoid narrow specialization. For our teaching and learning, the implication is that we try to relate things happening in one knowledge to another. If it is inflation and things like that, devaluation, it is not a purely economic affair. It is also a social thing. It's a language and communication related. It's related to virtually everything. Then the one that is again more very well desirable is your conceptual prowess. Concepts, ideas have to come, and the ideas have to be concretized. So these are all the type of, if you like, brain level learning that the world is looking for. And even as, and then there's where we see, we're thinking of reading and writing. Ladies and gentlemen, these are desirable. But this day and age, you need also not to be afraid of figures and tables and diagrams, because most communication goes in that form. It is simpler to draw a diagram that shows how to get to toilet facilities than to write toilet. It's easier to put something in graphic form and you look at the relationship between A and B. What is missing there is digital literacy. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we say cognitive learning, it goes beyond being able to reproduce what the teacher has said. Remember, we have to innovate. 2, it's a combination of all the skills, including digital literacy, which is not on the chart, which you can add. And what is digital literacy? It goes beyond mere handling, because digitalization, we live in this world of digitalization, and you have to be able to communicate and understand what is communicated to you using all the opportunities that ICT offers. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is one area, cognitive learning, which goes beyond merely how much do you know, like we said yesterday. Then in the middle of it, you have live coping skills. In other words, if you have your certificates and you cannot fit in a job, You cannot get married and take care of a home. You cannot take decisions on the way your life should go. You could not manage your own affair, and you don't. You have no control over anything, and you have no patience. You can't deal with people. You can then you are. These are you don't have those personal skills that we said the other day, that in addition to qualifications, such you need also personal skills. So the first here is what's important: intrapersonal awareness, meaning within you, what are my strengths and weaknesses, and how do I, strengthen, fortify my areas of strength, and how do I improve those areas of weaknesses. And closely related to that is intensity, meaning can you function in a team? Can you work with others? Can you accept the way others are thinking? Can you respect them for their own perspective of looking at things? And ladies and gentlemen, these are two qualities you need even for communication and for working in teams. The implication for teaching and learning is that we organize in such a way that students are also engaged in working in groups, trying to find out. If you remember what we said about the teacher inspiring students, it's all part of it. Then there's what the Americans call street sense. Here we said social sense, meaning society, there are people who have not gone to school your own way, who are non-specialists like you, who are non-academics, but they are not useless, they are not uneducated. They are getting things done. And if you, as an academic person, you can be conversant with the way things happen. You are a professor of business, but if you go to Adia marketplaces in West Africa and set up a shop, your professorship may not be of help if you hadn't learned how the street vendor survives and what particular personal skills they need to get that done. And for teaching, it also pays to get it out of the physical laboratory of the university, the social laboratory of the world out there, so that what happens out there can enrich their perception of this, and so they can rise from merely adopting to adapting and probably innovating. And you need a positive self-concept. People call it I can do spirit. Don't say it is too much. There is also a way. And this and age, I said it in another context, where you can now survive without being, we say, digitally literate, but here I've said ICT of activities that ICT can help you with. If you look at yourself, so many things have become simpler. You can transact your bank account from your desk. You can call your colleague in America on your phone. We are doing this from a corner of the city of Ibadan, and it's getting through to the rest of Africa and probably beyond. We have to be aware of these possibilities and make efforts to adapt, to adopt them and learn more about them and use them as we go along. So that's combined my thinking about life coping skills. But finally, we did say earlier there is something called lifelong and lifelong learning, life-wide learning, meaning if you have your certificate, it gives to you, you also need the life coping skills that makes you to, because life is not easy, living is not easy. But if you have to cope with life, and if you have to build upon what you've already be learned. Lifelong learning, that is, that comes with learning as a habit, should go with it. And it starts with the spirit of inquiry. What is it like? I would like to find out. It's related to your having this strong desire for looking for information, for searching. And this day and age, your ICT versatility will even help. Then, self-directed learning. And this we must inculcate in our students who come for it later, where I want to learn this and I go ahead and learn it. I could seek help. But it is not a question of doing just what the teacher said or what the employer says and so on. If, for example, you are moving into a management, or you're a lecturer, and you suddenly be named ambassador of your country to some country, there are things you've not learned, even if you studied international relations. How do you identify this in yourself? If you have done just intrapersonal awareness, you will know. And so what steps can I take to learn more about this? So that at least when people use the jargons, I will get to know. And related to all this is his burning thirst for continuous self-improvement. So 3 sets of related, what do you call it, parameters of successful learning. It is not only I have a first-class honors BSc. It is in that self-honors, in that BSc business, have we inculcated what we have there as a cognitive learning dimensions? Have we, in the process, developed in our students the skills they need to cope with life, the challenges of life? And have we developed in them this burning thirst for continuous self-improvement? So, ladies and gentlemen, equality learning is what we've just been saying, but it is not simply how much you know anymore. It is what you can do with what you know in view of what you have become, or group differences. And for us to ensure that successful learning, that is what makes it really qualitative, takes place, cognitive brain work is okay, but that brain work should emphasize what you have here are the higher cognitive processes. The lower ones are just memorization. Now, today's young people are going into a world that is getting more and more complex. How do they cope? What qualities are needed for them able to cope? And we can build this in the method on which we teach, not just the content. And these people have to become continuous learners because they are going into a world where innovation, creativity is the thing. How do we develop that in them? Those are the questions we'll be asking if we have to promote, we said, teaching for learning. If you want to teach so that people learn, if you say they have learned, what do we mean? It means they've acquired these 3 sets of skills in one way or the other. But underlining everything is this burning thirst for continuous self-improvement. Yeah, let's go ahead. So, go ahead. Yes. And this is perhaps the most important. Remember, we started by saying quality teaching for quality learning. And we went on to talk about what constitutes quality in education. The most important point here is that it is what you sow that you reap. And we showed you that diagram where you have to sow quality, nurture quality, so that you can reap quality. And what is it that you reap? We saw in the last diagram of the 3 dimensions of successful learning. Now, how do we teach so that learning can take place? Let's look at it. Go ahead, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my work has taught me that there are 5 levels of teaching. The lowest is the dictatorial teacher. And what does he do? Dictator. I have said it. What have I said? Full stop. You don't change. If you change, you are in trouble. So in that type of thing, you're encouraging learning at the surface level, adopting. The next higher level is the didactic teacher. And this is common with people who claim to have had training in education and pedagogy. I say who claim. They have had training, whether they've mastered or learned qualitatively is another thing. What do? The lecture says, their own lecture note says, go step 1, step 2, step 3. Let the students sit. Let them fold their arms and listen. Let them take notes now that I said they should take notes. Now that I've finished, let them ask a few questions. And they say, because that is the way you've been taught to do it. You as a lecturer, if that is what you do, you are just being didactic. This is, you are not creating, you are not helping the students to rise from being from the level of adoption to adaptation and others. Number 3 is a demonstrative teacher. And this is common in the science and technology related disciplines. I will illustrate with a common case. When you take iodine, you look at me, I've taken iodine, look at me again, I mix it into this, and it results in a product called iodinalysis. What have I said? Iodinalysis. You've simply demonstrating, working hard, and probably sweating, but you are doing it alone. It is not a situation in which students learn by discovery, by guided discovery. It is not a situation where students can see something different and say it. They may not even see. They just watch you jump up and down. That's a demonstrative teacher. And when you come into such a teaching situation, you find the lecturer is jumping up and down, is the only one talking, is the only one showing how it should be done. And at the end, he says, yes, you can now go. We have finished. You have probably finished, but they have not finished. And the next level is the pseudo-interactive. Why did I say pseudo? It's because the students will be allowed to say that the students ask questions. They do not contribute. And when they ask questions, the lecturer is expecting, just give me back what I have given you. It must not be anything outside the box. And the student's question should not raise further questions. It's a question of shut up. Don't ask me a question, answer my question. And when you come into that class, you see students raising their hands, but they're really not interacting. The teacher is really not interacting with them. And what I call the highest level is the creative teacher. The creative teacher can sometimes give orders, say, sit, listen, do this, do that. The teacher is directing, not dictating, as we saw in a chart the other day. The teacher will probably follow some sequence, as been told, introduce, exercise, and all that. But it will go beyond that. There will be a time when the teacher will demonstrate, There will be a time when the teacher will say, you can ask your questions. But the difference is this. One, the creative teacher, the method, the approaches, the materials will depend on the circumstances. The fact that people are different in terms of learning readiness, learning preparedness, and so on. The fact that facilities for teaching and learning might be different. The fact that today's student is different. The fact that this is a rural university class and this is an urban university class. The fact that this is teaching people who are already working and have come for an evening lesson, and those who are fresh from school. Everything, even the time of day, the weather, so they are all things you cannot predict. But the creative teacher will take all this into consideration and decide what works best. That's one quality. The other quality is that it's all the creative teacher is involved in student engagement. And if I was to ask you a question, I would say, just as I said, in terms of learning, are your students at the university level going to be limited to adapting, or going on to creating? That creating is what we need because that's what they need in life. Are you, as university lecturer, going to merely dictate right now? But let's see how it goes. Now, I've been explaining, but this is a summary. When you teach at level 1, you are simply the all-knowing teacher, and you are stuffing. You are giving them the stuff, and they must be quiet. When you are didactic, you've got some formal rules, and you follow them blindly, irrespective of the situation. When you are demonstrative, you allow students input, but only say after me. Or, as I say, you don't raise other questions. You must wait. Level 4, the pseudo-interactive, you encourage student participation, but it's still not different from the demonstrative. It has to be in the box. If he says to collapse is to
Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof.
Yes, can we go on? Next slide. Okay, very good. Now, for the creative teacher, it's for us to be creative as lecturers. We now have to apply this radical paradigm shift from being the teacher who knows all to the teacher who is seeking how to know. That is, we are exploring knowledge and procedures and all that along with the students. Two, that lecturer will not be the sole talker. He or she must be also a good listener. And three is related to one, to such a lecturer will not regard himself or herself as only the person who just gives information. Like we said, teaching is, but somebody who joins the students to look at new insights, new procedures, new ways of doing things. And you are no longer a conductor. Look at me as I do it, but an organizer. That is, you set the process in motion and you see it through. And what is most important is no longer that didactic, this is the answer. That's showing, encouraging people to look at other ways, to seek other ways of looking at the issues of hand. And you don't just dictate, you let people. And most important, you are not just interested in one person being the only learner. You are building up the team player because they are expected to be team players in later life. We can go on. We're still on the creative teacher. Yes. When you teach at level 1, when you dictate, what you find is passivity and boredom. People are doing what they like and you are doing your own from the microphone. When you teach at that level 2, where you are following just the procedure you've learned, people will be attentive when you are starting. Halfway through, they wouldn't know what is happening. And when you are that one who, level 3, where there are activities, but they are your own activities. So they are repetitive in nature. The brilliant student will be doing something else. And when you go on to where you allow some interaction, it will be varied, your activities, but it will still be dull. And you find that students become restless. But when you are engaged in creative teaching, first, you are flexible. Second, your activities are of diverse nature, and you keep organizing lecture work in one way or the other, different ways, not just sit and front me and write notes, but you set challenging activities. What is good about these challenging activities is that they lead to learning by discovery, not just learning by memorization. And when you discover, it means you have gone through some mental process, sometimes some physical process. So you are in the process, in fact, learning how to learn. And the most important thing is your lecture or laboratory or farm work, or workshop work has to be all the time linked with the world out there. We did say earlier that we need the social laboratory, the world out there, the practitioners operational field, as well, in addition to what we have in-house on campus as physical laboratories. And this applies to every subject. In fact, every subject is a practical subject, whether you call it Latin or literature or chemistry or engineering or agriculture. Everyone is a practical subject in the sense that working, finding out, discovering, arguing, all that, testing ideas, testing products, testing procedures will occur. At the same time, there are practitioners of whatever trade there is outside there. There is the world outside where politics is played for the political scientists, where economic activities take place from the economists, where manufacturing in different forms take place for the engineering and the scientists, where communication is taking place, where people are grouped together for the social scientists, for the communication experts. So there's no end. And that's one way you can also bring both your teaching and your research and your activities outside the university into the same package to achieve what I call tripod of academic excellence. Yes, that's. So I'll set a question here. I would like each of us to think about what we've been doing and answer two questions. You can send me the answer. The questions are: one, looking at these levels, at what level have I been functioning? Two, what should be my desired level? And three, what effort can I make to get there? One, there are levels 1 to 5 according to me. According to you, examining yourself, at what level are you? And two, what level do you think you desire to be on? And three, what serious, strenuous efforts would you like to make, are you committed to making to achieve that level? I think if we're able to think that way, we're also going beyond mere adopting to adapting to inventing. So, but we have to do this in practice. And here I'm suggesting I'm giving practical hints in 7 points. Let's go on. Point number 1, next slide. Go ahead. To the next one, last. Thank you. Now, these are the 7 principles. And these 7 principles combine to form what I have decided to call transformational. Please, please, can we go back? Back, please. Back again. Okay, stop here.
No, Kwesi, go to the 7 principles. The 7 principles.
To what I have christened as transformational pedagogy. Remember that teaching for learning involves successful teachers transform lives. And these principles I will read out and then we'll go through them quickly. Number 1 is reflexive teaching. I will explain later. 2, we respect the learning pyramid principle. And 3, we place the concept before the label. 4, we facilitate full student engagement. 5, we incorporate the implicit curriculum. 6, we promote student psychosocial support. And 7, we harness the resources of the social laboratory. I've mentioned social laboratory so many times. Now let's go into details. Yes, principle 1. Next. Principle 1. Let's stop there, please. No. Here, first principle. Now, the first principle I said, reflective teaching. Successful teachers engage in pre-teaching. That is, before I even confront the students, how do I get ready? And to get I have to know John more. It is a cyclic process. Before we ever go in to confront the students, we have pre-teaching, meaning I teach John Latin if I have to. It involves knowing our students, and we've said certain things about their characteristics. And two, knowing that subject. That is Latin here, implies being able to simplify it, being able to illustrate it, being able to make it so concrete, and being able to present it in an orderly manner. So there's a lot of work that goes before we get into the lecture room or laboratory. And that will lead us directly to student engagement, which is teaching. So pre-teaching, teaching. Student engagement, meaning somebody raised the issue yesterday whether we are lecturers or students. When you lecture, you are talking from your notes to other notes without passing through the minds. But here, you are passing through the minds. People are thinking and doing, and we are working together. Student engagement. And when the bell has rung or time has passed for the lesson, and you go back to your corner, there is the post-teaching. How has it gone? It can also take the form of a simple test to see how people have understood. It can also take the pose of a simple questionnaire or even casual discussions to see how are things happening. And that will now determine the type of pre-teaching activities we engage in, which in turn will determine how we do the teaching and continue with post-teaching. So successful teachers engage in this reflective teaching. Now, next slide, second principle. Next, we're done with this one. Next. Next says, oh la la. Next, no, sorry, 2, not 3. A little. Aha. So next one says, I said you obey the learning pyramid principle. What does it say? It says the more you talk, the less they learn. And if you look at that diagram, when you lecture, that is, you do all the talking, what students are able to retain is not more than 5%. When you combine lecture with saying read this and read that, it is in class and immediate application, it goes as far as 90%. In other words, the second principle here for effective teaching is not to, I call it de-lecturizing the lecture. The lecture will be there, but it will be, lecture simply means lecturer talk will be there, but it's so minimized and other things go along with it. The more these other things go along with it, the more the students learn. So third principle, the third principle, it says the concept before the level. When the teacher stands there and says, crop rotation is, and goes on and goes on and goes on, or says, is crop rotation is, you only end up in memorization. So all that you're talking about are the label, evaluation, devaluation, imagination, they're all the what do you call it, the label. But what matters is the concept, where, for example, you place two conditions, two situations, life situations. In one of them, there is a ruler, and whatever he or she says is the law. In another one, there is a community that organizes itself to take decisions and to follow up the decisions. And then the discussion goes on, which one would you prefer, for what reason, and all that. And by the time they settle on that, you now say this is what is called democracy. Then it means they've internalized the concept before giving it a name or knowing the name for which it's called, the label. So, in other words, it's pays to learn principles and theories and whatever, but it's more important to deduce those principles from practical experience. That is number 3. Number 4. Next slide shows us number 4. Number 4. Number 4. Now, full student engagement. I will explain, because when we say they don't do all the talking, when we say you employ creativity, we are saying so many things have to happen. Number one, progressive complexity sequencing. Every subject has its every subject has its structure, and it pays to start with the simplest to the more complex. When that has been mastered, it becomes step 1, goes to step 2, and that applies to every subject. Number 2, we said interactivity. Remember, where we said pseudo interactive, it is because the teacher is asking all the questions and the students are answering. And it must be questions. But in cross interactivity, students are talking to student, teacher is talking to student, everybody is, it will be a sort of discussions in all sorts of micro mini groups, as well as discussion, flow of information direct from the teacher to the students, either as individuals or as groups or as a team. So the arrow of interaction is going so many ways. And that is related to number 3, which is free flow of ideas. In other words, certain views expressed, certain observations, certain things said by some students may not make sense to the subject. But please, we don't shut them down when we're engaged in the exploration of knowledge through student engagement. We try to reason, because the person we think is right, wrong may even be right. And we allow that whatever I said as a contribution that will move the discussion or the activity forward. And number 5 says, you go beyond mere knowledge acquisition, that is, this is what has been told, to knowledge exploration. If you say, this fertilizer does this, does this, does that, by the time you say it does it, under what conditions you are engaged in knowledge exploration. And knowledge exploration will help you to learn, to acquire the skills of learning how to learn. It will raise your knowledge to just not what you know, but what you can do with what you know, and so on. And number 5 says predominance of team activities of all kinds. Activities can be mental, they can be physical, they ought to be both. It could mean getting out of the class to get things done. It could mean reporting on what person has seen somewhere. So engaging with students also implies there will be activities, but not lonely activities, not lone activities, but activities in groups, in teams. Teams work towards a common goal. Groups can be anything. Now, the way you move from 1 to 2 to 3 will be governed by the situation. That is situation responsive. In most cases, when you are just starting, whether it is concrete activity or merely listening or writing, you find it takes a little more time at the very beginning. But as people master one procedure and they go to the next one, you find you can raise the pace. And since learning readiness, learning willingness, learning preparedness will change from group to group, it pays to let the situation determine how you go on. Number 7 is a summary of it all, but let me go back to 1. What you are presenting will rise in complexity, little by little. But let's remain here, please. It will go in progressively difficult, complex form. That ensures that one step is mastered before you go to the other one. Interaction has to be cross-sectional, cross-directional, and ideas should be allowed to flow. And we're not going beyond memorizing, we're going knowledge exploration, meaning using the knowledge to acquire more knowledge. And team activities of different types, depending on the situation and on the subject, will predominate. And the way we go from step 1 to 2 to 3 will depend on the situation. But everything together, 1 to 6 amounts to 7, Lecturizing the lecture. Re-lecturizing the lecture. The question was raised yesterday, what is a lecture? A lecture, again, is when you do all the dictation of notes and people go away. But where you re-lecturize, you actually help learners to get transformed in the sense that your lecture notes become a guide to what the activities you get done in the process of full student engagement. Thank you. Number 5. Number 5 is important, and we all tend to ignore them. And this is the implicit curriculum. Let me go down when in schools, I don't mean before the university level, you had to come in at a particular time, and if you come late, you are punished in one form or the other. You have to wear perhaps school uniforms, and you have to obey your seniors and your teachers. In religious institutions, you have to pray and all the rest of it. These are things that you don't examine, but they affect your life afterwards. So the implicit curriculum are those things that are not examinable. Sometimes we don't know where they are, but the institution, in this case the university, is in charge somehow. But they are all non-formal. The important thing is that they are learning opportunities. And when we offer them to students, or we allow, sometimes they're even organized by students themselves, they are avenues for development of general knowledge and personality development. How? Through social interlearning. Interlearning meaning I'm learning from you and learning from the other. And as we go on, I give you an example. Sometimes you have academic support activities. My experience, you study in French in the classroom, but you do have a French club where you interact with people and drink your tea in French and interact with your colleagues in French. Believe you me, those who engage in that more intensely will also become the better performers in academic French. Another type of the physical psychosocial development, you are there, it is a games, it is a football club, it is a judo club and all that. You think you are not learning. You'll be surprised that your physical fitness will also impact on your academic fitness. Or number 3, it is a group of girls' guides, what do you call it, anything community service. And you all get together to go and clear the rubbish in the neighboring village. You'll be surprised how much you are learning. You are dealing with people who come from different disciplines. You are organizing yourself. You have a goal to pursue. And in the process, you are expanding your network. Again, it will impact on the formal learning. In terms of creativity, suppose it's a painting club, a dancing club, a theater club. It is not to be examined in the examination hall, but in the process, you are exercising a talent or acquiring a talent, you are networking with other people, and you are expressing yourself in body language and all the rest, and all are things, and you are working with a team. It could also be a religious thing, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, Pentecostal organization. And as you meet once every evening to sing and pray and worship, you are also engaged in interaction with others who are from somewhere else. You are using your brain, you are using your talking, you are liaising with people, you are discussing about, you are relating religion to life. In the process, you are learning. This type of learning will not directly be examined, but it does impact on the way you learn, because all the skills you acquire are also the skills you need in later life. Now, leadership development, culture formation, and culture promotion. It is, you are the team leader, you are the rapporteur general, you are the secretary general, you are the treasurer. In all this type of thing, you are learning. The student is learning. And we as teachers should encourage our students to be part of it. Then you have activities that could be entrepreneurial. We're weaving baskets and we're selling and we're keeping the money. We are preparing, we are going from the school to a literacy program in town, and something is being corrected. In the thinking, the planning, the execution of these activities, we're learning things that will also be useful that you don't necessarily get in a formal subject setting. And you have the regulatory activities, which means there are laws to be obeyed, and you, the students, could even meet those who enact those laws. And those rules and regulations can also be part of all these activities. In other words, one aspect that can enrich our teaching and make sure we teach for learning is to complement that explicit curriculum where we examine, where we have a clean syllabus, with the encouragement of students to be exposed to the implicit curriculum. There's a joke about triangular students who go from the dormitory to the lecture room to the library and no more. And when they get out, they become part of the unemployable people because they've not learned so much outside the book in the library, the place they sleep in the academy and the dormitory, and the lecture room where they probably sit idly bored and doing nothing. So the thing is, we have enunciated 4 principles that deal directly. Principle number 4 is classroom, lecture room, laboratory, workshop, engagement with the learners. And this number 5 is to complement that. And it is the job of every university teacher to encourage students to engage in these forms of activity, and if possible, have a way of directing what happens. And this will depend so much on what is happening and what the size of the institution and so on. But whatever the size, let students be encouraged to do, if you like, out of class activities, some of them directly related to what they are doing, studying, and some not directly related but useful for inculcating those skills we saw earlier that make for successful learning, when we said something like life coping skills and learning to learn skills, which you merge with your cognitive skills to become both a useful citizen to yourself and to society. So 6th principle. This is, I've called it student psychosocial support. And the principle here is that all our students are capable of learning. To say the person is ill-prepared or ill-motivated or ill-mature, yes, but strictly speaking, it is possible to address the learning challenge from the standpoint of every learner, every student. So the issue is this, that every learner comes to this learning task with some form of challenges. It could be physical challenges, it could be mental, it could be social, it could be economics, it could be something we don't even know, emotional. So our task, if we are teaching for learning, should be take the form of behavior gamification engagement. And this implies that every student, virtually every student, will need some psychosocial support. And so, let me read fully out on it. Group and individual counseling activities must therefore be built into university life as a step towards ensuring the full blossoming of the talents of all students. Remember, learning, teaching is directed as awakening, nurturing of talent so that talent can blossom. And talent has so many dimensions. So the university, our teaching should not be limited to what I've called teach and go. It should also be limited to our being accessible to students so that they feel free to talk to us and we feel free to guide them. This guiding will be a way of nurturing talent. It will be a way of reinforcing their life coping skills and possibly their learning to learn skills. And that will enable them to go beyond mere adapting to adapting, and beyond that to creativity. So, seventh principle. Yeah, the seventh principle. Remember all the time I talk about the social laboratory. The advantage of the social laboratory, meaning the world out there, is that it enhances experiential learning. People say experience is the best teacher. Let me take the subject I think I know. Take pedagogy. The students have gone through in the education faculty how to teach. And you get them into groups, and this is starting from experience. On these days, you are going to watch 1, 2, 3, and you also agree with the teachers, the owners of the school, the managers of the school, what they should be engaged in. When they come out of this, they compare notes. And as they compare notes, they meet to reflect on the experience. And as they reflect on the experience, knowledge exploration starts. That is, when they start using the knowledge they have to gain new knowledge. Let me use my own teachers, student teachers have been taught how teachers will teach the English language. They go into 10 different schools to watch how teachers teach, no judgment. Then they stay there to ask the teachers, why do you teach the way you teach? Because it seems to be different from what we were taught. And the teachers say, we wanted to do this, but because of this, we did that one, and it worked. It worked because when we tested, when we did this, it happened. And they begin to reflect. Does it mean then that what we learned in the textbook and in the class, that teachers should do this, should be the limit? And they begin to say, well, they begin to draw the conclusion that we will do this provided it does that, and that what matters now is not what we do, but how we do it and the result we get. And so it goes on like that. And when we come to the formal class, it becomes, that is, the introductory class discussion goes on again. Ladies and gentlemen, this will apply to virtually every subject, whether you call it philosophy, which you think is abstract, to agriculture, which we think is practical. There is no theory as good as there's no a good theory is confirmed by its applicability in principle in the world. And what you call theory and principle are all enlightened, informed by what happens outside. And if you want the university, first it helps the lecturer too, because the lecturer is also working with the practitioner, and the practitioner's experience is enriching his or her practice as a teacher, and the nature of the research is also taking another dimension because of the lesson. So 7 principles so far. The most important thing is that we de-lecturize the lecture. We turn the lecture into a lively experience through student engagement. Next, we try to know the students so that we can address their learning problems, and most importantly, expose them to the wider world. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be expecting. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I was to summarize, teachers operate at level 5, that is, they are creative teachers. 2, teachers are not just conduits of information, like we say, they transform lives. As we say, if you engage with an effective teacher, your life will never be the same again. And when we say creatively, you are looking at what works in specific circumstances and applying them. And number 3, learning is not an event, it is a continuous process. In other words, the more you learn, the more you develop the capacity to learn, the propensity to learn, and learning now becomes a habit which you apply all through your life and all through your experiences, lifelong and life-wide. And the important thing is continuous self-improvement. That part of you that was deficient before, you're doing something to improve on it. But we have to teach for learning. And how best can we do this? How best can we do this? How best can we do this? We've outlined all this. So, ladies and gentlemen, how best can we do this? We go teacher-directed, student-activated processes. When the teacher is organizing, students are the active actors, and it follows a process. And what we want to do, we want to develop those skills needed for fitting into 21st century life. We had it before. In the very first encounter here, we said hard skills, know the subject; soft skill, be a human being; go-getting skills, be somebody who can go out and create something. Because we also said this will depend on your acquiring the book or the brain knowledge, but also the mind. What type of person are you, and how can you fit in the world? Life coping skills. And most important, you cannot go through life effectively if you're not a habitual learner. So what learning to learn skills have you acquired? And all these you need to fit. These are the skills needed to fit into the life that our students are going in. So to take away, we mentioned 21st century last a minute ago. There is a 13-page document that AAU will email to all registered participants. It is titled Teaching 21st Century Skills. It takes these skills one by one and saying at the university level, what activities can we engineer, engage students in for fitting into 20th century lives. So I think I should thank you. It's been an interesting session, and your questions and concerns will be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the insightful session. So we'll pause it here, and then We'll play it during the session. All right, thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. It's been very insightful and great. Prof Payobanya is online, and so we'll move straight into the Q&A session. If you have any question you want to ask Prof, we would like you to kindly put your hand up by clicking on the symbol. You see a symbol when you go to the participant port. You see the symbol of a hand raised. Click on it, it will reflect on the screen, and we will enable the microphone for you to speak. But let me go through the chat and see.
Kwesi, can you make Prof a co-host so that he can freely unmute himself? Thank you.
Yes, I've done that. All right. So Grace Akambi, please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Grace, yeah, good afternoon.
We want to thank our meeters, Prof, very well. The question I want to ask is this. We have listened to all these suggestions, and it's highly encouraging that we can become creative. But on Tuesday, we look at the students that we have on grant now, some of them not willing to learn. And also, I want to marry that with the school environment that is not conducive. How will a teacher achieve all this? We want to talk about e-learning, motivating students to do some other things, but no network, no light, the environment is not conducive. What do we do first? How do we go about this? How can we achieve all this in an environment that is not conducive for both lecturers and teachers and students? And number two, I want to probably say that don't you think there is the need for value reorientation right from the kindergarten to the university level? Because even when you put on, you want to innovate, you want your students to learn, and you are, going up and down, your students, some of them are not even interested. They were just there probably because their parents wanted them there. I created a Google class, uploading my lectures, interacting with them. I had 160 students in my class, only 30 joined. And I said, okay, probably that may be too complex, or maybe they will use more data. Let me create a WhatsApp group. I created one. They were just advertising, they were just doing so much, and you become discouraged as a teacher. You want to work, you want to innovate, you want to carry your students along, but they are not ready to follow you. What do you do?
Thank you very much, Grace. Prof would answer that quickly.
Immediately? Okay.
Yes, Prof.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Prof, we can hear you.
Well, I think, yes, I think Grace Akambi knows me very well. It's a question, first of all, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's customary for every generation to say our time was better, but nobody had a video of your time to know how better that was. But we are saying, because the times are different, we must act differently. And there was an issue raised in the beginning of this. We are now dealing with Generation Y. When you say do this, they want to know why they are doing it. We're dealing with a generation that is also passing through hard times with all the value reorientation business. And that's why we too must think, bring in some fresh thinking and fresh doing. Ladies and gentlemen, when at the university level, at least from my own experience, when you start being practical, not dictating notes, everybody is in a hurry. Let him give us what he wants to do. But you then find that the more you continue with what you're doing, the more they begin to like it. So my suggestion would be, don't give up. The situation will even be more strenuous than it is today. But giving up means not learning. As you go ahead, your creativity lies in your ability to find solutions to challenging conditions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would still suggest that you bear in mind that the times are different. When you went to university, when I went, we were few and were more perhaps motivated. We must get our degree and go to work. Today's generation is not thinking that way. They want education. And education means reorienting them by all means. Please persist in what you are doing, provided it is the right one that will help them. They'll do something about it. Now, value orientation, ladies and gentlemen, is not limited to the younger ones. I am working in the midst of university lecturers in a university that is well known. And if I were to tell you stories of what I see in lecturers, I think the value reorientation has to begin there. It is true, we need value reorientation. I always say that the real meaning, value is a qualitative concept, but we've turned value into a quantitative one. People will see me and wonder that I live in a small house. I don't think it's small is what I need, but to them, the bigger my house, the more important they think I am. People saw me get out of something I was doing for government because I needed, they said 18 months and I did 40 months and left. The reaction was, you could have got this, you could have got that. But I think what I have got is important. I've been So for value orientation, I think we as university people, highly educated people, should set the example and not fall in line with the Joneses. I'm not saying that I've given an answer. I'm only saying there are other ways of looking at the issues raised. And I thank Grace for her contribution.
All right, great question from Grace and excellent feedback from Prof. We'll take that of Christine Ampo for answer. Christine, please go ahead.
Thank you. Please, okay, I hope you can hear me.
Absolutely. Please proceed.
I'm grateful to Prof. I think I speak on behalf of all of us for the past few days what he's taking us through. But I would like to react on what Grace just said. You know, students all over the world are the same. Once you bear the name students, so the experience she's sharing is almost the experience that I believe that most of us are sharing. Our students these days are not interested in learning, and you need to push them. Then secondly, the conditions that we have are not all that conducive, as she rightly said. But I have adopted a way of going about it, as Prof also mentioned, and I just want to share that what I normally do most of the time is the flip classroom. So you make it very practical and it is more involving, so that I divide them into groups and I give each group a topic to go and learn on their own. So now they go and learn, and when they come, they select a group leader who will be teaching. I don't teach. When I do that, I don't teach. But I will be there to moderate, I'll be there to direct, I'll be there to, add, make additions and corrections and all that. And it makes the class very interesting. I noticed that When that happens, they will be calling me, Madam, it's our turn to present. When are we presenting? And all that. And also the rest of the students, they tend to appreciate it when they are is better than when we stand in front of them. So I just want to share that these are one of the ways that perhaps we can get them out of their shells a little bit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that contribution. Prof, would you want to add a little to what she said? Perhaps react to what she said. Okay. Let me check if Prof is. All right. Prof has dropped off a little. We're waiting for him to join us, but we still would want to take your contributions, your comment, questions. If you have any, please let us have them. Irene, if you are there, could you kindly take us through the chat? Are there any comment questions in there? Okay, so let me quickly go through the chat. All right, Esther. Esther, please go ahead. Esther, please unmute and.
Okay, thank you. We want to thank Prof, for all the eye-opening points. I just want to emphasize, one area, and Prof already mentioned that. We are talking about the present generation.
Esther, you are muted. Hello, Esther, you are muted. Please unmute yourself. Great.
I said Prof was my lecturer at the University of Ibadan for postgraduate studies, PGD and MEd. And all the things he has said, were things he was actually emphasizing, when we were still in school. I think every generation has this problem of, individual learning disabilities and so on. It's either you are ready or you are not ready. You are willing or you are not willing, that kind of thing. He has already highlighted the coping strategy, for such that we need to inspire them. We need to be more creative about the way we teach. I think we should even take this down to secondary school level, especially we in education who are training teachers. This kind of teaching that Prof is talking about should even start at the secondary school level. So for those in the faculty of education, they should start training the people who will be teaching in future at the secondary school level and tertiary institutions, that they should be more open, they should be more flexible about the way they teach, taking into consideration that there are students who are not really ready. There are those who are not willing. There are those who have potentials, but they don't want to explore the potentials they have. We can always encourage them. Let's not take everybody at the same level, believing that, oh, you're already in the university, you're already in the secondary school, this is what we expect of you. No. And we should be creative. That's the emphasis there. And there are different ways of being creative, and we can bring the students in. If we try to interact with the students, we'll learn more about what they need. It's not just your lecture, just pouring out what you have. Let them have a lot of input into what you are doing, and you'll be amazed the way the students will even teach you. So it can also happen at the secondary school level, not just at the university level. I've seen it all. I've taught at the secondary school level, I've taught at the university level, and that has been my experience. That if you give students enough room, they can also teach you. And engaging students in other activities apart from, developing their cognitive skills also helps. Engage them in drama, debates, and so on. Debates will help them in public speaking. Drama will allow them to express themselves. You may not know that you are doing this, unconsciously. But in future, you discover that students that you engage in drama, in debates, and so on will be the outstanding ones in future. Not those who are passive learners. Those who just take notes and then regurgitate and then you return your notes to you. I think most of the time that's what we expect at the university level. You just give lectures and the students will just return your notes to you. That's why we insist on students buying our lecture notes. We should allow flexibility. That's what Prof is trying to tell us. Allow flexibility at all levels of your teaching. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I think that is very insightful as well. Prof, would you want to make any comments? We had, yes, Grace and Esther giving great insight.
Yes, I can hear you. Well, Christine, Grace, Christine, I think I've met you before. Well, the important thing here is make it practical. And practical doesn't mean carrying blocks. Even exercising your thinking, getting people to be together and focused on something is all practical work. And my experience, I practice what I call educationeering. I don't know what branch of education is that, but it's to make education happen. Universities have called me, can we train our lecturers? And I've had 200 lecturers in the same room. And when you come in, there's dead quiet and everybody's demonstrating somewhere in 20 different groups. I've had this opportunity with workers in the ministries and so on, those who are normally busy. So if you are lecturing direct reading from a text, they are busy thinking of their daily problems. But the moment you let them organize themselves, even choose who to work with, either to sit under a tree or to sit on a pavement or to remain standing, you are amazed the creativity that people will bring into it. So it pays. And as Esther really said, this has to start at the lowest level. And I think it's happening in the kindergartens. But as we advanced, as somebody said yesterday, we become tutors and masters and not teachers. We think we no longer mingle and play with the children. There is even something called playway method, and it works. So it's possible at the tertiary level. And I can demonstrate it, that when you sit among the students, not carrying a microphone and raising issues for discussion, you are amazed. And as she said, you'll be learning from your students, not just the subject matter, but even other ways of looking at the same subject matter, their applicability, and even their behaviors as students, their capacity to persevere, their capacity to turn things around, which is the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do. And I'm interested in what was said about faculties of education. When I deal with lecturers in faculties of education, I tell them they need mastery, a double third type of mastery, and one of competence. One is mastering the teaching model. You've learned from books and elsewhere how to teach. That is not enough. It has to go on with modeling the master teacher, mastering the teaching model, and modeling the master teacher. Why? Because we all tend to teach not the way we were told to teach, but the way what we have gone through as teachers. So I think the problem here also lies with their faculties of education, because they should have this responsibility of reorienting teachers in the other faculties. And for them to do this, they need not only to master what Fage and Philip and Obanya have said, but they also have to model, that is, in their own teaching behavior, to inspire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm really enjoying the Q&A session. Very, very insightful. A lot to take home. We will still have, yes, I think we have about 15 minutes more. If you want to ask any question, if you want to make any contribution, please feel free. Just click on the symbol with the hand raised and we'll enable your microphone for you to go ahead. I think we've gotten Prof today, so please let's bring all our questions and our comments so he could answer most of them before we sign off today. All right, so while waiting for people to ask their questions, I will just go through the chat. This is coming from Esther. You want to say something else? Okay. Esther, go ahead.
Thank you. Prof, is there any way we can make lecturers at the university level to go through a kind of orientation by the time you take them in, and even while they're still lecturing, you know, from time to time? I'm currently in the US, and I know that for every profession, they go through like renewal of certificates. And so in Nigeria, you know, we pride ourselves to say that I have been teaching for 30, 40 years. I've had a degree, you know, for 40, 50 years, and they keep on repeating the same notes. Don't we need orientation of lecturers, incoming and those who are still on the job, you know, to keep on renewing their minds? There should be a requirement at the university level about, you know, recertification or whatever. I don't know what to call it. They do it in the US for every, I know in the nursing, medicine, some other professions, you know, they make you go through recertification and you need some credit hours. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Esther. And Prof will respond to that quickly. Let's pick Duressa so that Prof can answer all of them together. Duressa, please go ahead. Duressa, yes.
Okay. Do you hear me? Hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead. Can you please do without your earpiece?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the professor. Thank you for real presentation and also the main qualities of the education that you gave for us. Thank you, really. I have one comment and question regarding the secondary school students to get a secondary school student.
Duressa, please switch your video off.
Those have a creativity we have to do on the secondary level students as when I rise. Sorry?
Yes, please put out your video so that your bandwidth will be a bit stronger. Switch off your video so that we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So each, yeah, okay. Okay. Students, now today we are not getting more creative and excellent students because not all that means not all in all, but more students that came from secondary school to higher university level students are not more interested in education, and also they are not more powerful to receive education. So we have to do on those secondary school students to have and excellent students. We are in university, higher university level, if we have more experience, that means if we have more cognitive knowledge about education, we have to give a training to teachers by preparing a subjective or any methodological learning way, or in a subjective training. We have to prepare such kinds of training for also secondary level teachers, because those teachers must give a more knowledge for those students. That is my one comment on the secondary school. School in a high level, the second question, in higher level university teachers to teachers, those are available in a high level university are not more getting a training center. That means here we are association with all universities available in Africa. We need experience.
Teresa, we are struggling to get your
training
question.
Center from all universities. That's to summarize, high level university teachers must
All right. I think we would have to proceed. Teresa, what you can do is to please put your question in the chat box so we'll read for you. We are struggling to get exactly the question you're asking because of your internet challenge. Please put it in the chat board and we'll read that for you as well. Prof, I think we would have to let you comment on Esther's question. I'm not too sure if you got that of Teresa, but when you put in the chat board, we'll read for you.
I got some of it, yes.
Great.
Okay. Well, one thing that is said is after some time, your students become your teachers. So Esther is now my teacher. I would have said clap for the girl. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the question of pedagogy training for university level teachers was a concern right from the 1960s. And the Institute of Education of the University of London started training because they said the lecture was not helpful because notes were passing from the lecturer's notes to the student's note without passing through the minds of others. And tomorrow we are going to look at teaching mind to mind. And so all sorts of courses went on. In our case in Africa, they've been ad hoc, except there are now a few universities. Ibadan is an example, and I had the honor of declaring open another one in southeastern Nigeria, where you have a center that deals with studying the learning needs of teachers. That is, even in spite of lack of facilities, lack of ICT and so on, in spite of students being rowdy or unrowdy, in being large classes or no large classes, to see what exactly are the challenges and how can teachers remedy this. And in such places, you have what I've seen happen in some Eastern European countries. You have TTT, teachers training teachers. In other words, I have been in a laboratory with 90 students and I've been able to make them learn. So I'll be demonstrating this to fellow teachers, because when I do that, it makes a lot of sense than a lecturer from elsewhere telling them how it should be done. It's better to show how it has been done than how it should be done. And I remember in my UNESCO days throughout the 1990s, we had a program funded, and Professor Akilapa Sawyer of AAU was part of it. We had pedagogy training for teachers in higher education, which we did in Portuguese and all that. And universities were supposed to take this over. This hasn't happened. And I think we need 2 levels, policy level, to enhance it, to insert it as both conditions for recruitment, for advancement, for retention in the teaching profession in universities. Because we do give grants for research, we do go send people to higher academic degrees, but we've never really institutionalized the acquisition of pedagogical knowledge. And I think this should be institutionalized. But the more we engage in this type of workshop, because what we're doing now is just the beginning of a very, very, very beginning. If we continue this way, there'll be more specialized things. And we do hope that participants will go back to their own places and advocate for the institutionalization. That is at the policy level. But at the practice level, you have to have a body that deals with it and will be based solely on the needs assessment of practicing university lecturers. And will not be initiation just for those coming in. And it will not be for junior lecturers only. It will be for all categories, because at every stage of your university career, you do have specific pedagogical roles to play, and you have to be prepared for this. And you also have to have a stage where also what you call learned societies, Nigerian or whatever medical association, Kenya Institute of Linguistics, Zimbabwe Association of Electrical Engineering Professionals should also instill pedagogy, as some subject to be discussed. And in our higher degrees, PhDs who are destined to teach in universities, I think there should be some exposure to compulsory courses, introductory courses on pedagogy, because they are initiated into research, but they're never initiated on how you use the research for teaching for the benefit of wider society. So to summarize, the solution, the suggestion is most welcome. The ad hoc practices we had in the past should become more formalized in the form of policy directions at national and institutional levels, and strict adherence to these policies by having structures that will deal with pedagogy and will cover the lecturers at different levels, and will be a continuous type of training, not just one shot, not initiation, not those who don't have education degree. Ladies and gentlemen, even those who have degrees in education are probably more in need of this type of training. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that feedback. But Prof, in my small mind, I am thinking that, in our universities, we tend to give much more premium to research in terms of academics promotion than the contact hours with students. And so that is more, that is really pushing academics to research much more than paying attention to the teaching or the class engagement.
We're not even researching and we're not publishing. What we have is publicating, which is different from publishing. A conference is approaching, what can I write? Or my student has produced something, so can he write so that I put my name to it? You never find, and I stand to be corrected, and I fight against this every day, a university researcher who is head and body into research on a particular field, so that when new students come, they are part, like an apprentices, joining the researcher to do his own thing. And that this researcher is engaged in participatory research, meaning his research is on marketing, but what is the connection with the market woman out there? And when you look at 10 publications, they're addressing 10 different issues. Well, no one leads from one is the other. So even in the area of research, we need a lot of strengthening and reorientation, because worldwide, we're not even rated as doing anything on research. And it's because we're not doing that we're also not impacting on teaching. Because you've been researching, your ideas, new ideas will be flowing, and these new ideas will influence what you do to your. Then, I think universities are changing worldwide. People in the old Soviet Union, in the old Eastern Germany, they want to know how how versatile you have become, what you have added to your PhD. And they've insisted, and in the American and Canadian universities, the students are evaluating you all the time, including the books you are using, your punctuality, the content and the rest of it, your assessment procedures. And the heads of department, your peers are also evaluating you, and you are confronted with this evaluation to see how you are learning and progressing. And I think if we want to be worldwide, what you call the world type universities, we must take the three together: research, the research, publications, which is free publication, not publicating, because we tend to allow rooms to cheat, for people to cheat the system.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for that feedback. Mary Felicia, please go ahead with your question or contribution. Please unmute.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate Prof. I'm particularly interested in the implicit curriculum, principle of the pedagogical roles of university staff. It's very important for us to pay attention to that also, because Prof mentioned that it's part and parcel of the life of our learners, even ourselves as lecturers. Little attention has been paid to this aspect of the curriculum, especially at the university level. And I will want this forum to address that in terms of being able to translate it or relay it to institutions where we ourselves are learning. I want to appreciate and perhaps give in a nutshell what I think that Prof is also propagating. Every situation is a learning process. Every circumstance should help us we ourselves to understand why we are learners and not just the bosses to dish out learning. We are learning. One thing about Prof is that every time he will tell you I am learning, he will tell you I'm a learner. And that really touches me. And I will really appreciate whether you're a professor, whatever level we think we are. Let us remember and recognize the fact that we are all learners. And in fact, teaching is a vocation. And if we take teaching as a vocation, then we'll give it all the time, all the interest, all the aptitude that should be involved. Some people say that teachers, their reward is in heaven. And it's an adage, but there is something important about that adage. That is to say, after you have given all your time, after you have given all that you have and contributed to somebody's growth, you may not be able to get all that, the reward of that in terms of money, or you equate it with money. But then you have built a structure. And what is that structure? Human beings. It is very, very important. If we really realize this role, our role as teachers, and I think all that Prof is saying, we'll be able to really take them seriously, not just ending here in this workshop or conference, but rather those of us who have been privileged to be part of this, take it home, apply them, and then perhaps be also mentors to our fellow lecturers and the institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary and Felicia. That is also very insightful. We appreciate that a lot. Dr. Ras Akolache, please go ahead. Then Prof will come in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Absolutely, please proceed.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Kwesi, and thank you, Prof, for a very wonderful presentation. First, I want to acknowledge that I'm very pleased that Prof mentioned something that I kind of intimated yesterday about the need for us to have an ongoing training and assessment for our professors. And to even add to that, I would suggest that professors need to engage more in collaborative teaching. There needs to be peer-to-peer evaluation. In that environment, people are much at ease to learn from their peers. So I'm glad that the professor did mention that. But the main reason I want to submit my contribution is about the idea that I'm hearing, probably if I didn't hear correctly, but I think a few people have intimated that it appears that we are having students coming into the university who are not interested in learning. And I think I have a very different view about that. And my view is based on the fact that a lot of us who are in the business of teaching students don't really understand the kind of students that we are getting these days. So one thing that I would want to submit respectfully is that we need to begin to understand the kind of students that we are engaging in our classrooms. They are coming to us these days relatively younger, which means that they have a whole lot of growing up to do. Some don't even know how to study well. So we need to do a little bit of hand-holding in that respect. Now, even though they are coming young, they are very worldly in the sense that they have access to a lot of information. So we should not always think that they are coming to us tabula rasa. We need to find out where they are and use their previous knowledge to get them where we want them to be. So these kids are very smart. They may seem a little bit indolent, but trust me, they have a lot of information that we can also learn from. Now, they are coming from probably one of the greatest challenges in our classrooms these days is that we have these students who have grown up in what I call a very rich multi-sensory environment. So when they come to your classroom and all you do is talk, you're going to lose them. So we need to keep that at the back of our minds, that attention span across the globe is diminishing, and it is diminishing.
Okay.
To the kind of students that we have. And the last point I want to make is that the kids that we have today are always looking for what is the need for me? Why am I learning this? How applicable is it? What is the relevance? And I think that our challenge, regardless of what you teach, your job is also part of what I call connecting the dots for our students, so that they see the entire picture of why they are even taking this particular class and that. So that would be my submission. And in a nutshell, we need to understand the students that are coming to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raz. Indeed, understanding our students and their characteristics and background is very crucial to academic success. So we appreciate that comment very well. I'm sure at some point Prof will come in. Irene, if you're ready, could you take us through the chat pod whilst we still wait for a few people to engage us, either asking questions or making comments and contributions?
Kwesi, thank you very much. I'm going through the chat for what has been done, but it has always been acknowledgement for Prof and the great job that he's done. And so Umutayo says, thank you, Prof, for the presentation. He said, I believe you are right. Individual presentation through more tasking are more effective in getting all students to participate. And so everybody also agree with what Prof is saying. So Damilola is saying, thank you, Prof. I have a question. Would you say that university calendar is adequate for covering the syllables and yet providing a comprehensive education to students. Also, many lecturers who seem to go the extra mile are seen to be doing too much by some of their colleagues, especially in light of their salaries and the publish or perish syndrome. What are your thoughts, Prof? So, Kwesi, I think Prof can take this one. And
absolutely,
then we can
very, very crucial. Yes. So, Prof, could you take that? Let me check. Okay, Irene, Prof has dropped off. Yes, he's online, okay. So we can proceed. Yes.
So I don't know whether you've asked the one from Dr. Biodun, but he said YOLO Year 22004 titled is inaugural lecture that we may learn better. At 2021, can we avert that our students are learning better with this incessant political unwillingness to finance tertiary institutions in Africa? I think that's also a good question. And then if Prof was on, I think he would have answered that. But Kwesi, that's all I have in my chat. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that these questions can also be answered by participants. If there is anyone who has a view to share on the two key questions, one that says that if lecturers tend to go beyond supporting students in terms of teaching and learning, they are seen as doing too much in relation to their salary. If there is anyone who could give some sort of inspiration or some guidance, that would be very great. And then also the second question that came up. Okay, Dr. Abiodun is please go ahead.
I want to appreciate Prof presentation and the organizer for this wonderful system of our knowledge. I want to affirm that lecturer cannot do too much. Because the task dispensed, as Prof have said, Prof give our students, the students buckets that we are going to be pouring knowledge into them. No, we put in which we not even be doing so much. The little we do is mainly the task of facilitation. We like I'm currently working on a novel strategy called flip pedagogy. Flip pedagogy. We recommend that much of this teaching task should be packaged, given to the students ahead of the class interaction. The student will have gone over the course content. They will have gone through the lecture notes. You will have used technology which will stimulate their learning capability to package this instruction. And when you come into the class, you are not going to be teaching them. They are going to be raising issues, discussing issues together, interacting together. So there is little or less ado to the task of teaching this 21st century with novel instructional strategy. So the lecturer cannot do too much. You can engage them, put their hands on, put their minds on, and let them learn from themselves and lead to facilitation from the lecturer. So I believe that lecturer cannot do much more than expected. They are just to perform their task and make sure that the students are well engaged with the teaching content. When these are done, nobody will challenge lecturer that they have done beyond the salary they are collecting, and nobody can even pay the lecturers. The worth of the task lecturers are doing is beyond what women can pay for. It is what we just do because of our passion and our interest and our love of humanity. So we should not be thinking about money value of our task. We should always be conscious of the fact that we are dealing with life, and the worth of life is beyond imagination.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, we have just 7 minutes to go. So we'll pick the last contribution from Grace, and then we'll wrap up the session. Grace, could you be very brief?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the feelings of the person that asked the question. There are some people like that in your environment. They don't want to do, and they want to discourage you because you are probably passionate about what you are doing. And I think our pastors don't mind that what we are doing is right. They say it all over the places. It's not only your institution. She wants to kill herself because of the students. She wants to do this. No, please don't be discouraged. And one thing is very important that we may not take cognizance of, that some of these students, they are actually taking to reform their lives. And you may not know. Sometimes some of them get across your children anywhere. And they mention their names. Are you a son of Lagbaja? Are you a son of this person? Say yes. Oh, that woman, she really taught us passionately when we were in school. So whatever you do, people will comment in the future. But please carry on. Put on extra energy. Put in extra energy. Be passionate. Be committed to teaching. And you know, we are building generations. You don't know which of them will become teachers. I'll be passionate like you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, for that comment. And on behalf of Professor Payobanya and the entire AAU, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a very exciting journey from Tuesday to today. We're bringing you the third module tomorrow, and then Prof has agreed to also take us to the final module on Monday. I think going forward, we will be repeating some of these topics because they are very, very crucial and important to our work as academics in our universities. We have also received a lot of requests from you concerning certification. Yes, if you would want to be certified for this training, it is $35. We will be sending you the payment modalities for you, I think in our next email that will come to you. We couldn't send you the materials yesterday, but today we'll send both the second module and then the third module to you as well. So see you same time tomorrow. We wish you all the best and please stay safe. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, I agree with you. We need to set up a center of excellence in teaching the universities. So that is very important. We'll do that. Great. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.